Hello, Elisabeth. Elisabeth, would you like to introduce a little bit of yourself, like how you, when you started working with somatic experience and how you came to the attachment work, and also how does attachment work and somatic experience work together? How do they how do they complete each other?
My name is Elisabeth Schneider Kaiser, and I work since 37 years. And I think 25 years ago, I heard from Dr. Peter Levine. Some of you, maybe some of the people know and heard about it. He is the creator of the method somatic experiencing. At that time, when he was bringing his work to Europe, it has not a name. It was just, he was working with the nervous system. And he was working with the Rolfers because also he had the background of the Rolfers. And as my husband is also a Rolfer, I had the chance to participate in a workshop. And then he told me that he will start doing a training in Colorado, in Boulder. He lived a little bit outside of Boulder, and there he started to do the first training of somatic experiencing. The name came later in, and we were 3 European people, and all the others were Americans. And for me, because my background is body psychotherapy, also bioenergetics from Alexander Lowen, which includes all the knowledge of Reich. And it was interesting the way Peter was working, because he had a kind of working with the nervous system where I intuitively could see that he understood what is needed from where the person comes, prenatal or a short after birth, and where things got stuck. And the way he was in a resonance, and that touched me very much. He could not say very much about it, but to me it felt like, wow, this is something I could learn, something new, and I was very inspired. So I did the training in Boulder in Colorado, and it needed time to deeply understand. I really know it was not here. It was like it was going through me to understand the dynamic. And then it was also starting this kind of different language. Even I came back trained from Carl Rogers, because they have also a very empathic way of talking to human beings. But here it was something different where you really start to invite the person being interested to your inside. But it needs someone from outside. Yeah. And this is a little bit interesting, because if we look to attunement, then there should be someone outside who is interested in the child. Peter would not say it like this, yeah. But we know more and more that it needs someone who is empathic, gives space.
Yeah, here we are already in like what we call attachment and relationship.
Yes.
So that was then already there a little bit in Peter Levine's approach, even though what we know is like mostly somatic experience is applied for shock trauma and shock and freeze and what happens in accidents, catastrophes, and so on. But then when we come to attachment, like you just explained, then it needs somebody outside to make the child interested, or make your partner interested in yourself, then we go to attachment. And there is a different approach, as we know. It comes from John Bowlby, the original. Yeah. How does that work together, Elisabeth?
I just would like to add a little bit, because you were
Please.
so brilliant
Yes.
the way what you were bringing in words. Because in shock trauma, as we just say, shock trauma, there is a shock. And that can lead to traumatization, to trauma. And what we really know, that it's too much, too fast, too soon. Because we know nowadays, if people are prepared, they will not go through the shock trauma. If we look to operations or whatever.
If you have time to prepare yourself for what is coming at you. Yeah.
Yeah. But in attachment, it's permanent.
It's repetitive. Yeah.
It's permanent. And as we know, also it starts already pre and perinatal. Because we know about when the caretaker, the mother, and it's not against mothers, but if she has a lot of stress, it has a big influence to attachment and development. And
so the child in the belly is actually living the stress of the mother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A bit stress
and
is good.
response to it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it should not be. Or if the mother take drugs or is in situations which are always give a kind of stress. So it's a kind of atmosphere around the little one who wants to grow the embryo or the fetus, where it feels like threat. So it cannot really explore.
Develop,
it cannot really, and it has also a big influence to the organs and to the hormone system. We know that today. Yeah. And when the little one is born, and that's very, very interesting, a little one has not a thinking, this is my mother or my father, but they sense there is a welcomeness. Because this is in us.
So that's the whole attachment, let's say, tools, they are already there when we are born. So with our eyes and we perceive it, and it gets, then it something happens in the nervous system, in the body.
Absolutely, because you can see when you look as a newborn, and there's a kind of friendliness around. Also, if the light is not too light, if it's a little bit like, oh, good in the way the little one, because they come out of the inner world to the outer world, then they open up. And if this cannot happen, they shut down. Yeah. So it's like going, because they need a self-regulation. They have to learn to self-regulate. It goes the first week. They come from the inside to the outside. And they need warmth, not only by temperature, also by how.
Through the eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we look at them. It's like really holy, you can see it. And they feel like, and then they can rest.
So when there is friendliness and warmth coming from the eyes, something inside can relax and rests, or relaxes and rests. Yeah.
And that supports also the self-regulation, and self-regulation for a newborn means also that when they get fed, that they learn to digest in a good way. A lot of human beings, it's not all about this early, but a lot of digestion problems have to do with pre and perinatal trauma, and very shortly after birth.
So the relation and the what comes from the outside does affect our organs and our, like you say, intestines, lungs, heart, yeah,
and
the whole
also the skin.
Okay, yeah.
Because, you know, the little one, when it comes and gets fed, and that must not mean that the mother can always give the breast. It could also be that the little one gets a good bottle. But when it gets a warm hold, and then the little one has a reflex to touch already. It starts touching. And if there is a kind of warmth and welcomeness, then it already goes with that. If there's a coldness, then they just go back.
They withdraw to the inside.
Yes, it goes in freezing, in holding back.
Yeah. And that's because it cannot rely on
absolutely
on what comes from the outside.
Yeah.
And that happens automatically, right? Yeah.
And as we also know today, and this is so, for me, it's fascinating, you know, mother and little one co-regulate each other. Because the little one tells the mother, if the mother is there or the caretaker, you know, this is what I need, this is what I don't like. So both learn from each other. And it was for many centuries, even mothers knew it or midwives, but then the culture said, this is how it should be, yeah. But they learn together, and if the little one is maybe a little bit screaming and said, then the mother says, oh, what do you need? Is this right? Is this wrong? So she is really interested.
Yeah.
This gives both co-regulation, because the mother is regulating herself and the little one too.
And Elisabeth, now, if let's say we had all this, how would this, or we didn't have the right support in our childhood, how does this affect our relationships now as adults if we didn't or did have the background?
Yeah. What if we look to attachment?
Yeah.
Then we know that it can have different levels, you know. If we have the first state, and if the person, the caretaker, is there and is functioning in a way, yeah, so the child gets the food and it gets a different kind of nourishment, but very cold and functional, yeah, then the child will really go in freezing. It will not really being embodied.
So that means when it is just functional, the emotional response, the empathy, the warmth that you were talking about is kind of excluded from the ambient.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because the warmth and the goodness brings the possibility that the child can embody. This is very, very important to understand. And that brings us to vermeidender Bindungsstil. I don't have the English word, sorry.
Avoidant. Attachment.
Yes. Thank you so much for the support. Yeah. Because, and we hear already in avoiding is something which is not there. And the avoidant attachment style is very, very deep in the core. The energy has to go so much back and is very much in a freezing stage. And we need to understand what the little one has to manage is in a way a kind of unbearable, because the child has no chance to regulate the energy. So it has to take back everything. So when we work with human beings who have very dominant adults, who have very dominant this style, we have to go slowly. Because when this energy comes out, it's like they feel like who I am. And also we need to understand that these children and the grown-ups who have dominant this attachment style always feel like I'm not from this world. I have no right to exist because they didn't have any warmth who invited them. You're welcome. And they have big problems when they get closer, and this can make a lot of troubles in partnerships.
You mean when they go in a relationship and they become more intimate? So let's say in the beginning it goes well, there's kind of a playfulness, and then when it gets intimate, then the problems start.
Exactly.
Because there's something inside.
And it's frightening because they don't know how it goes. And then we need to understand from where it comes, because they did nothing wrong, but there was not the right, adequate support there. And this is needed to understand.
That was in your childhood, but it still gets activated within the relationship.
Absolutely.
And then the secure attachment is endangered, something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how does somebody that has this, let's say, unsecure or avoidant attachment style, how does he recognize it as an adult that he is? Because what I understand is that most of our childhood, we don't remember. Even if you've been hurt terribly by your parents, you would say, my mother was a loving person. She was sometimes, yes. But they've been hurt somewhere deep down and they had to withdraw and they don't remember any of it. So they say today, that's who I am. That's who I am. And I don't like to be, I'm better on my own than with somebody. You're too much for me.
It's interesting when you just talk about it and show it.
Yeah.
Because the way the avoidant attachment style would not have this movement, you know?
Okay.
The avoidant attachment style would say, everything is okay. My mother was there. She loved me. And this is the difference. The emotions are not there. Because for emotions, you need that there is a kind of empathy.
And I understand it's very, very, very difficult for the partner of this attachment style to manage it, and also for the avoidant attachment person. It's difficult to manage a relationship. What can we?
They manage it. The avoidant attachment, they manage it. It's not, because it's interesting that you bring the word they manage, because a lot of managers are avoidant, have parts of avoidant attachment. Because you can manage a lot, you know. They are very brilliant heads. Einstein was avoidant attachment, you know. They have brilliant thought. They are really also, they have so good things, but they have not the feelings, and they have not this warmth and the needy. They don't say, I need that you are here. We have another attachment style who really have that needs, but not the avoidant. The avoidant would say to the partner, it's good you are here, and it's okay when you go. That's a difference. Yeah.
Let me look. Wow. Just one more thing. And that's about when I invited you some years ago to come to Barcelona, and we did a training there. And if I want to learn this work, And let's say I come from the somatic experience background. How does the different attachment styles or the work with attachment enrich the somatic experience work, the trauma, the shock trauma work?
Oh, if you have the understanding of the nervous system, it's great. What's very important, because nowadays in a lot of somatic experience trainings is the theory from Steven Porges. And Steven Porges' theory is absolutely important to understand the dynamic of attachment, because this we have to do with the mammalians, because mammalians and human beings need contact, need holding, need healthy attachment. And this is needed to understand. And this is not from somatic experiencing when you have shock trauma. People who come for shock trauma, they don't need always that you also do attachment work. Sometimes it's underneath or people need it, but also people can just come for an accident and you can work with it. It could come out, that it would be good. That you also have the understanding, because very often when there's an accident, it could be that something before happened where attachment was interrupted.
For example, you had a fight with your girlfriend, you made an accident.
It can be. But if you have operation, also narcosis, it's not needed that you have attachment. It could be, but it's not necessary. But you have total different dynamics when you work with attachment. You need to understand how the caretakers were and what happened to the child inside also. What are the parts of the nervous system? And how do you knock at the door and how long time it needs? In somatic experiencing could be that you do 10 sessions with someone. With attachment, you need sometimes years, because when someone had no one there, it doesn't go like this. It need to wait, to be there, to say, hey, I'm here. If I talk to you about the ambivalent attachment style, that's another part of the attachment. That's where the caretaker is there in a warm way, but the caretaker is not there in time, and that the child knows, now my caretaker is there, now the caretaker goes away. And it's always a kind of manipulation.
You cannot rely on them.
Exactly. And for a child, it's so important that child knows my caretaker is there. And a rhythm can come. And the caretaker is not just, now I'm with you and you are nice, and now I have to go to my garden and look for the plants, and so the needing could be there for a moment, but then the caretaker is gone. And when something was there, and then it's not really total there, it just always have a kind of risk. It breaks. Then this means the child gets empty. It gets a little bit filled because someone is there. And then the person goes away, and then the child is like, when will you come back? I never know. It's a mistrust. And then the child goes away from themselves, away from the own contact, is always looking, what does the other need? If I have something interesting, then it will stay here.
They call it jealousy today, or they used to call it jealousy in the old days.
And the child will produce a lot of things, because when I have something interesting, then you will stay here. These are people, when you're a therapist,
can be sex,
and you have
also
clients who say at the end of the session, the most important thing I didn't tell you today. So then you are maybe in a trap, because then at the end of the session, the client says to you, oh, and then you say, okay, now I have to listen. The good news is to tell the client, okay, I hear you have something very important. We see us next Tuesday, and then you can tell me what important you have. Here it's important for the therapist that he is doing a note and says, next Tuesday, I remember you wanted to tell me something, because then you start a bonding.
And they remember that they can rely on you.
Yes, and a trust. She's not only talking, she really means me. And that gives, again, contact. Then the person can staying with themselves. And this is an important work because we have so many people also with ambivalent attachment. And the third structure is the disorganized attachment.
Wow, yes.
And the disorganized attachment is already what you hear from the word, because you hear organization is in disorganization. And the child needs really organization. And what's a bit tricky also in the disorganized attachment, and this was the attachment style Bowlby was really exploring about this years later. The first two styles we saw earlier, and this needed time. And he saw children, and these children were disturbing everything. It's not that a child is not disturbing sometimes something, but when it's not ending and they really disturb and look like they hate everything. And then he thought, why is a child doing this? Permanent and cannot relax, cannot regulate. And he found out this is a screaming of help, help me, because what they do to the outside, that's what in the inside, this big disturbance. Because they grew up in terror and horror. And the caretakers, and this is interesting, the caretakers can be good in a moment, but it can change so quick. They can be with the child and say, hi, I love you. And then it can be totally the opposite. And this is so threatening. It's no clearness. It's not really the way it is. It's changing, just out of nothing. And the children, you could see that the children go to the grown-ups, they want to go to them. And in the moment they walk to them, they realize, oh, but also this person is my threat. They want to disturb me. And then the child goes like this, and then it goes like that. And they cannot rest. They really feel like, I want to be there, and then they have to go away.
There can also be violence, no?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And in the disorganized attachment is also included the whole of abuse, sadistic abuse, narcissistic abuse, and all the different dimensions where we sometimes think as human beings, can this be? How words come to a child, how voice comes, how gestures come. And it's really unbearable what can happen. And for a long time, there was this thinking or the idea, disorganized attachment don't happen in society where it looks to the outside, everything is so clear and nice. But it's really everywhere.
Yes, yes.
And
it's very interesting, all of this. Yes, you want to say something more?
And we have much more clients who have parts of disorganized attachment, as we sometimes think. And we can see it or sense it sometimes when they just come in the room and they look where is the window or is the door. And then therapists start, oh, I want to look at them, and that they start being in the room. And it's good to tell them, there is the window, there's the door. And then they can maybe a little bit settle down. And from the nervous system, it's a very, very high arousal. And
good to know there's an escape.
Yeah, and I want to say, but people who were going through this, they can function in the world, but only function. And they very often live a life very poor. Very often they cannot eat warm stuff, because when you eat something warm, your body becomes warm. And for them, it's important to be very cold, because otherwise memories can come. I could go further now, but I think it's a little bit of overview.
Okay. Wow, this was a lot, Elisabeth. Lots of info. So just we should finish here very soon. Yeah. We will see each other in Barcelona.
I'm looking forward.
Our training at Pravati and maybe in setting up for you. And this is going to happen in the 19th and 22 of May. And then there's a second part of it, and a third and a fourth.
And I also will bring in, and I just want to add this because I'm also trained in NARM, and many people are interested in Larry Heller's work. So it will be also that I will talk about the structures from Larry Heller, but also from the bioenergetics, which has
the different attachment structures that Larry Heller developed.
Yeah. Because Larry Heller also have the structures from, you could say also from Lohn, and there we have the different styles also. It's the existential style, it's also the needy style and the trust style. We will look together to the autonomy and love and sexuality. So it will be a very rich what we explore, and we have really, and I really want to honor and say this, we have wonderful organizers, really, because if we don't have this good ground, we cannot start something wonderful which will be explored. Yeah,
we will try and get a really nice ambient and environment where we can share that work with you. Wonderful. I look forward to seeing you there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for being here right now and giving us this time. Thank you, Elisabeth.
Thank you, Satyati.